Akhetaten's Gates, Chapter 5. My life at regular school was fairly difficult as well. I never really fit into any of the cliques that were established. I was intelligent, like a lot of the Goths, but I didn't look like them, nor have a desire to. I disliked sports and found cheerleading pointless. Even the academic groups outcast me. I suppose I was just so limited on the things I considered interesting and that I held a passion for. I always felt alone. Normally, I was alone. At this point in my life, I was 10 and in the 4th grade. As like the prior years, I was normally by myself, lacking friends and social groups that met my standards. Or I lacked theirs. I seemed to have poor social skills, finding more interest in books and education. I had a love of art and individualism, and held a lot of respect for those who could truly display that. But there weren't too many children my age that could accomplish such things. Society taught the idea of individualism, but the reality of conformity. It was rather stressful and frustrating. I had no friends my age, and aside from select members of the archaeological community that knew me, there weren't many adults who could appreciate the company of an intellectual child. Vacations were normally spent in museum tours or on dig sites, getting the most of the experience and learning the tricks of the trade. It was no secret that my most peaceful and compliant moments were normally on the Egyptian sands. It always saddened me to return to this place, where life was a lie and a charade of fantasy was always hung as a dim screen over reality. The dawn of civilization, Mr. Patterson, my teacher, began. We could very well look at our own history, but then we wouldn't be learning the whole story. You see, history precedes even that of America. After all, we all come from somewhere, and humankind has always learned to appreciate where we are going by looking back to where we have been. History is said to repeat itself. Many instances give credence to this phrase. But sometimes there are things in history that are not so good as well. We surely do not wish to repeat those things. We should not reduce ourselves to ignorance and learn nothing. The past is the key to the future. Many things we take for granted today were once grand theories and discoveries, even mythologies of the past, and from it came a science we've become comfortable with. This was certainly a grand speech, but it wasn't getting much attention from the class of elementary school kids. After all, children weren't really interested in history. They were so absorbed into the here and now, the world of television, video games, and other modern marvels that were not even a twinkle in the eye of an ancient being. Other concerns were on their minds. Who would be on MTV today? How much attention will we get if we played hooky? I don't even think they call it hooky anymore. How late is the mall open? What's for lunch in the cafeteria? Do those shoes match this shirt? Such was the thinking level of a modern child. Did I qualify? To an extent, yes. But perhaps my simplicity was also my complexity. I had come to the conclusion that education meant so little to the children of this world. It is so freely given that the true value of it is totally lost. I suppose I had a lack of interest as well. Such was good as gaining an education, but my mind was always on the wonders of the digs of Egypt. Aurora! I snapped out of my thoughts and daydreams to realize Mr. Patterson was staring at me, as were several of my classmates. Huh? What? Did you say something? I was just saying that your parents are archaeologists, correct? The people I live with are Egyptologists, I replied. I don't have parents, and that brought about the ever-present awkward silence. Could you tell us what they do? I was hesitant, feeling all those eyes on me. Such pressure. I hated when people did things like this. And we go looking for the remains of the ancient civilizations, hoping to learn more, or even something completely new. Do you dig too, or do you just watch? One of my classmates asked. Sometimes I do. They've been teaching me how to use some of the tools. Normally, I bring the tools to everyone else and bring them water. But I did find a cartouche stamp once. Was it from King Tut? Another asked. I don't think there's a lot of anything left that belonged to him, I responded. It belonged to a nobleman that worked under Tutmosis or Hatshepsut. Have you ever seen a mummy in real life? I took these questions in a bored stride. I got this a lot. Yes, I've seen a lot of them. I've never seen one on the field, but we visit the Cairo Museum a lot. Have you been to the Valley of the Kings? Sure I have. But there isn't as much to see there as there probably was in the 1920s. Are the pyramids cooler up close? Nothing in the desert can really be considered cool, I joked. But they are really neat. Are all of you Egyptian? Well, I am, but I don't think Bernard and Darla are, I said. Are you related to ancient Egyptians? I would like to think I am, but I suppose we can never tell 100% for sure, can we? Don't be stupid, another classmate laughed. No one can say they are ancient Egyptians anymore. Egypt has been taken over by all sorts of cultures, so if anything, she's Arabic now. She has more chance of being related to Ali Baba. That got some laughs, but Mr. Patterson and I didn't find it all that amusing. I don't think I'm Arabic. I mean, it's not like I'm claiming to be a relative of Hatshepsut or Ramses the Great or Nefertari, but I know I have an old bloodline from the land. I just know. But regardless, I don't think being related to ancient royalty would make me any grand millionaire profits. There probably isn't a lot to be found there anymore, is there? One of the Shire classmates asked. That's not true, Mr. Patterson chuckled. Did you know that when Tutankhamun's tomb was found, a lot of people thought the same? All the mummies had been found, and there was nothing left to find in Egypt. Then, poof! A perfectly undisturbed tomb. So, we really don't know. I mean, we're talking about thousands of years and generations of people that have all lived and died and left behind remains in a culture. I beamed proudly. We're going to Amarna this year. I hope we find something that will really be a piece of history. I put my head down on my desk. How did I always get myself into these kinds of messes? Well, I knew one reason. I was opinionated and I had a big loud mouth. My classmates pointed and snickered as they passed me. They were getting their kicks as I sighed in agitation. I got up and headed to the chalkboard in front of the classroom. I picked up the piece of chalk and began to handwrite. I will not wish ill of my classmates. It was just one of at least 200 times I would have to write this statement. I'd only gotten to about 5 of them when Darla stepped into the classroom and gave me a sigh and a stare, looking rather deflated. Was she thinking this was not really happening, and I had burst her bubble? Oh, Aurora, not again. How do you keep getting into these positions? A lack of control of impulse, ma'am, I frowned as she made her way to the desk in the back of the classroom. Mr. Patterson, I'm Darla Dallin. Ah, yes. Thank you for taking the time to come down here. It seems Aurora is a child who feels very strongly about certain things. Perhaps even obsessive. She's passionate, Mr. Patterson, Darla said, taking a seat. She's very bright, I'll admit, and normally I'd admire a child with such determination and drive. But she is very overpowering when anyone tries to argue with her, debating them into the ground and then throwing insults. Verbally, she is a vicious person. I fear her level of passion is just not normal for a child. She seems to be unable to think on a level of other children. I can admire her passion for ancient history, but she is not Zahi Hawass. Darla scowled. Even Zahi Hawass had to start somewhere. This child was raised in a scientific and archaeological community. She is preparing to make her own theories by finding the facts and then defending her position in a competitive world. She's a leader, Mr. Patterson. Yes, she is extreme, but every child has a streak that is overwhelming. That's just part of being young. She does need to learn to control her impulsive outbursts, but I wouldn't say that we should condemn her for trying. She's a girl who, unlike many children, knows what she wants and is pursuing it full force. She wants to be taken seriously and respected for her independence and intelligence. She's just so aggressive, he remarked. Aggressive arguments are vital to keeping a theory and hypothesis alive when it is debated among other experts. Darla immediately defended me. You make it sound like she's a prodigy in archaeology. If that is the case, are you sure that the public school system is a proper option? Our job is to release children into the mainstream world, and Aurora is far from mainstream. Leaders are a very rare breed, Mr. Patterson, she said in a very cold tone. They should be nurtured and treasured to avoid a mainstream of brainless sheep. People like Aurora become the people who change the way we think and the way we live. And many of those people made it for the better. She may grow up to be the next greatest thing the world has ever seen. But if you think you cannot handle a strong-minded child, then perhaps you should reevaluate how you plan to teach the leaders of tomorrow. She stood and turned to me. Aurora, we're going home. I'm only on sentence number 75, I replied. Put the chalk down. We're going home. Well, that meant that I was not going to argue with her. I quickly put the chalk down and rushed to pack my things, chasing after her as she stormed down the hall. I think you may have overreacted a little, Bernard said with a sigh as he sat back in the big overstuffed chair. But I suppose we are the ones who should be taking the blame. How could you say something like that? Darla asked. When we had Molly, we were devoted to being parents. We treated her like our baby. But when we lost her, we dove back into our profession at full force to break away from the pain. And when Aurora came in, we never slipped back into being parents. She became our little Egyptian novelty. She was more like a member of our excavation team than our daughter. So she thinks like an archaeologist thinks, not like a little girl. Little girls her age want ponies, video games, and dress-up clothes. Aurora wants picks, shovels, and a camel. Her life is our work, and we never gave her a real option to be anything other than that. It's not fair to her. What is it that you expect us to do, Bernard? She asked with a squeak. She was holding back. She didn't want to direct her frustration at him. I could hear it in her voice. You aren't suggesting we just rip all of it away from her, are you? We can't just take her back like some puppy we can't handle. We did what we did because it was comfortable. If she was unhappy with it, we would not have continued. It's easier to bring her to the digs than to leave her behind. And she loved them very much. We agreed that she should be proud of where she came from. But she's not proud of where she is and where she's going, Darla. We aren't even sure what her history or heritage is. We should have made her just as proud to be a normal American child than some Egyptian descendant. Even native Egyptians do not act the way we have foolishly allowed her to act. I'm beginning to think we should leave her behind this year. No, Bernard, she's been so excited about going to Amarna with us. We can't take that away from her. We can't punish her like that. Let's homeschool her. She respects us, unlike her respect for others. We can handle her, and she'll learn anything we want her to learn. We can make it easy for her to pick up any sort of lesson using the same methods we have used to teach her about ancient civilizations. I don't know about that. Please, let's just try. I'm sure it'll all work out, really. We can't just abandon this for her. We can't just take away something she enjoys with such a passion like that. I had been listening outside of the room, eavesdropping in a way I learned was very effective, perhaps because they never suspected I'd do something this childish. But I had to know. Was I the cause of all their chaos? Was this just a curse of mine? They were arguing, and arguing about me. They loved me. I know they did. But what was this thing about me causing such misery? I was such a misfit no matter where I was. I wasn't a very good daughter, was I? It had to be true. I didn't have my real parents. I was destroying my new parents. I was just a failure at being whatever anyone wanted me to be. I wanted to go home, but I couldn't even remember or even decide where or what home was anymore. I retreated to my bedroom, hiding my face into my pillow as I cried. I felt so empty. I felt all alone. I felt cold, alone, and empty. I felt so lost and so frustrated and confused and confined. Life wasn't fair, and it felt like there was nowhere to go.